Earlier this week, Jaden Daniels told us that this game would be just like any other game without the emotions, but I tell you what, the junior quarterback did not play like this was just any other game. Hi, everybody. Zach Keenan here for Devil's Digest alongside our publisher, Hode Rubino. Post-game after ASU takes down the Bruins 42-23, led by their junior quarterbacks, 286 yards of passing and 2 touchdowns. Hode, this offense was an explosion. It's what we've been promised this whole year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to gain as many yards as they did, I think over 460 yards against the UCLA defense, which we said was a little polar opposite of each other in terms of being very stout against the run, but really being a porous pass defense. And we saw in the first half that ASU an absolute explosion in the air, and it really was somewhat more of the same in the second half. And once the running game really got going in the second half with Chip Traynham, his first game back since the season opener, and you really couldn't tell that he even missed a step. And I think that helped Rachaad White a lot. I mean, and I know you and I talked in all the games that Traynham was missing, how much it did affect White. I mean, sure, he was scoring touchdowns, and yes, he scored another touchdown or two today. But nonetheless, I think that it just really helped him to be more effective, and it really just helped for ASU to present that 1-2 punch on the ground. That even though UCLA played some really formidable opponents, I don't know if they really faced a running game like ASU. They did pretty well in the first half against, but the second half was a total different story. But again, it really was a pass defense. I mean, I thought that it was going to be a shootout. I didn't think that ASU would be comfortable in the shootout. And yes, I am happy I'm wrong, because I think this team really needed to make a statement. And the BYU loss was really so disappointing and so disheartening on so many levels. And I think a win tonight in the Rose Bowl against UCLA really is a redemption victory. More than anything. Obviously, now being 2-0 in Pac-12, 2-0 against Pac-12 South opponents, to me that's really the icing on the cake. The journey is far from over. I know we'll talk later about the next opponent for ASU, which maybe didn't seem that daunting up until now, but I think after tonight we might have to look at that opponent in a different light. But really kudos to ASU for really playing a balanced game. They did shoot themselves in the foot in the first half, but the second half I feel it was a really absolutely clean game but by ASU as much as the game can be clean. And absolutely you have to give credit to this coaching staff that not only had a good game plan, but even the first half not ending on such a great note, and I'm sure you're going to talk about that. The second half was a whole different movie, and a movie that ended with a happy ending not too far from Hollywood.
Rachaad White with 69 yards carrying and 2 touchdowns. Ricky Pierce all over 130 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns of his own. Again, Hode, this offense. But we go to that second half. Right before it, DJ Taylor was set to take a punt. All 4 seconds on the clock. The punt bounces on the ground. He takes it. It bounces off of him, and UCLA pounces on it inside it. I believe their own 10 or ASU's 10-yard line. They kick a field goal and put things within a tight, close range at the half. But then the defense comes out in the second half, Hode, and they don't allow a single point from UCLA.
Yeah, I'm a big believer that the way you end the first half or the way you start the second half can really have some circumstances and really dictate the game from there on out. And ASU really disproved that theory pretty quickly, at least as far as the first half. It was also really questionable that ASU did not call a timeout and really allow themselves more time on the clock after the UCLA punt. I guess looking back, maybe it was a good decision to make, because UCLA only had the 4 seconds, the customary time you need for a field goal after that mishap by DJ Taylor. But the way they opened the second half, the offense won the coin toss, deferred possession, score on the first possession of the second half. Defense, like you said, just pitching an absolute shutout on the scoreboard. It really was an absolute dominating second half, and not only did UCLA not score 1 point in the second half, they didn't sack Jaden Daniels even once. That's how much in control this offense was. The offensive line was really tremendous. A tight end like Curtis Hodges, who does a great job blocking, and sometimes maybe that gets overlooked because you want to concentrate on the good receiving plays that he has, and he had some great ones tonight. Tight end Jalen Conyers, I think, somewhat under the radar, but really had some nice blocking plays himself. There really was just a long cast of characters to talk about. Ricky Parasol, if anybody still doubts that this is not the #1 wide receiver, the go-to guy on this ASU aerial attack, I think Ricky Parasol, with his first ever 100-yard receiving game, definitely put that argument to rest. But really, I think just a lot of other players around him also stepped up too. And again, I really think it's just the belief of this team that they were not going to come out of the Rose Bowl here with a loss. Again, the first half ending on a pretty sour note. Whatever was said in the second half to both sides of the ball worked and really worked to a T for the Sun Devils. An absolute just dominating performance in the second half. I mean, even in other games where ASU had some impressive Pac-12 wins, there's a lot of back and forth. And again, going back to my prediction, and yes, I was wrong, but I really thought this was going to be a back and forth shootout, and it really was like that in the first half because, Zach, remember, every time UCLA scored, ASU answered with a score themselves. So I think that early on, basically, the Sun Devils told the Bruins, look, whatever punch you're going to throw at us, we're going to punch you right back. And maybe UCLA just psychologically we're just sick of getting punched back by ASU so many times. So really impressive to see ASU make a statement, really silence some doubters and some critics. And again, the fact that right now they're in the driver's seat for the Pac-12 South Championship, that's really the icing on the cake. But again, I really feel there was a lot to prove up until that point. I mean, the game was messy, sloppy, penalty-wise in the first half. Second half, a whole different story. And like I said, a happy Hollywood ending, at least for the Sun Devils.
Arizona State's defensive line holding one of the best rushing teams in the Pac-12 to 200 yards rushing exactly. And that's between Zach Charbonnet, Britton Brown, and Dorian Thompson-Robinson. What an impressive feat for this team en route to this 19-point victory. Hode, only 6 days instead of the typical 7 on a tight turnaround here. They got to go back to Tempe, probably heading back tonight, rest up for a little bit, and then they got Stanford, who had a pretty big day today. Not only Stanford beating Oregon, but how does ASU, anything they need to change heading into this game?
Yeah, I really think they need to look at the first half and know exactly what they need to clean up, but also I think the way they played in the second half is going to be, I guess, the fun part of the film session tomorrow. But really having a short week, and it is obviously a short trip from LA to Tempe, so that some negates it, even though it was a late kickoff. But Zach, I went on record before the season started that Stanford was going to be a landmine game for ASU. Week 1, Stanford made me look foolish about that, but after that, they definitely made me look smarter and smarter. Don't forget, not only did they beat Oregon in overtime tonight, but they beat USC, and I know USC is struggling right now, even though they won against Colorado today. But they absolutely just stuck it to USC, and not too far from here in the LA Coliseum. So ASU definitely does have their hands full of Stanford, and I think that maybe it's a blessing in disguise that ASU can't even afford to take Stanford lightly. I mean, sure, they're going to be on cloud 9 after this win, and they really should enjoy it. But when they took to the field, are probably already knowing what Stanford did. Yes, they didn't want to look ahead, but now it's time to look towards Stanford. I think that the good signs that we're seeing over here is a passing game. We talked for the last few weeks, this slowly but surely, this foundation is building, and we're not talking about Jaden Daniels, maybe being mediocre quarterback, or overrated quarterback. I mean, maybe you and I haven't said that, but I think the narrative really was out there about the wide receiver group, just really not being a Pac-12 caliber wide receiver group. I think that Jaden Daniels and his wide receiver unit is really just silencing those critics and really changing the narrative each and every game. Again, you go back to the BYU loss. I mean, sure, it was a loss, but you saw the passing game starting to get on track, starting to do the things that you expect them all the time to do. And the defense, I mean, you just have to talk about the personnel, or really lack thereof. Without Evan Fields to start the game, Tyler Johnson was very limited. Kyle Soley, the linebacker, gets ejected for targeting. Darren Butler, it wasn't out for that long, but obviously him being out, that definitely affected. And what do you know? These young players again show up. B.J. Green, Garen Stansbury. Stanley Lambert is not a young player, but definitely inexperienced. I mean, just really hampered by injuries for so many years. He gets a sack late in the fourth quarter. Will Schaefer at linebacker, another guy that performed. Eric Gentry was really, I think, has been playing well. Been playing very, very well for a true freshman, and that's another positive. I think really take from that this defense. First of all, I think enormous bend but not break, because ultimately UCLA had 423 yards of offense, and they only have 23 points to show on their home turf. Coming into this game, Zach, as we both know, they were averaging 38 points. So the ASU defense, the one that's been maligned in its own right, even earlier in the year, even against the quote-unquote cupcakes, absolutely put an unbelievable performance, especially in the second half, and I think some stretches of the first half, or at least the end of the first half. So there really is a lot of positives to build on, but I think also the fact that they need to be grounded, but with Stanford coming into town on Friday, is really imperative. And I think we're going to look back at the Stanford win against Oregon and say that really was a blessing in disguise, because whatever cloud 9 ASU is on right now, it better be cloud 0 starting tomorrow, Monday after August.
Jaden Daniels with back-to-back best games of his career, highlight games that he's had last week and this game. Hey, for Hode Rubino, I'm Zach Keenan. ASU pulls ahead in the second half for a 42-23 point victory, and we will see you back in Tempe.